Alright, welcome back. So today what I'm going to be doing is part 2 of the overdrive light flashing 5R55W series that I was going to start a very long time ago when I made the original video, but then I just ended up driving the thing and kind of got used to it and didn't really focus on it. So I ended up getting a comment on the original video that I put up several months ago. There was like almost 24,000 views on that thing, so I realized that I probably owe you guys a follow-up. And we're actually going to put the parts in that I've had sitting on the shelf for like 6 months now. I'm going to do a solenoid pack and valve body gasket. What I've already done to the truck, I already did the servo pins with the O-rings on it. There's like a mod you can do that there's 2 servos and they're modified pins that have O-rings because there's some leakage. So I did do that mod already and that didn't really help very much. So I'm going to try the solenoid pack and valve body gasket and see where it goes. So I got the truck for $300 and this is all just kind of like experimental, try it, see if it works, because I got the truck so cheap. So even after doing this stuff, I'll still have barely anything in it and should be able to still drive it or get my money back either way. So we're gonna do that today. Let's get started. I'm gonna start by going underneath, drain the fluid, take the transmission pan off. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is put a 7/8 socket on here, and I'm going to crack the whole plug loose. There is a T30 Torx plug inside the drain plug, but mine is all stripped out, so I'm just going to take the whole plug out. That worked pretty slick. Did I at least crack it loose? I did crack it loose. See, sometimes you win a little bit. I'm going to get this thing loose by hand. Got a couple buckets ready. So I did go ahead of time because I knew this thing was stripped because I already started to work on it and then realized that that T30 Torx inside here was stripped. So I did buy a whole new plug assembly. I'll be able to put a new one in there. So this drain plug has a hole in it. So there's like a plug inside of a plug, and then you actually use that to fill it. You fill it from the bottom, and then this little level here holds the fluid, so you know when it's full. So when it's up to temp, you run it, it sucks up as much fluid as it needs, so you overfill it, pull the little T30 out of there, and then run it, and then when it stops dripping, that's how you know that the trans is full. So it's actually kind of a weird but neat design. Alright, so now I'm going to take the pan off. There is like 16 or 17 of these 8mm bolts. We'll go zip these things off, and then we'll drop the pan. Oh, come on, Ford, don't fail me now. There we go. I almost thought I was going to be required to take the exhaust off there to get that out. You're not. You just have to dump a bunch of fluid all over yourself. So, fair trade. Alright, so next we're going to work on getting this filter and the solenoid pack out. But before I do that, I'm going to want to go above this little round section up here. This is where the bulkhead connector comes in from the top of the case of the transmission. So there's a 10mm bolt on that plug up straight above this. You can see where this wire goes into. So what I'm just going to do is use a 10mm ratcheting wrench, and I'm going to set this thing up so I can go right above, right over the top here, and get this wrench on this nut on top of the plug. It's a little tricky. You have to feel for it. There, now I got the wrench on. So now I can loosen up that bolt that's holding that plug in. So I'll get that thing all the way out and pull the harness out. So then you get this out far enough. It takes a little bit of turning on that bolt, and then this thing will come out. And then you'll be ready to use your T30 Torx on the bolts that are holding the solenoid pack in. And you can twist this thing and drop it down. But first we're going to take out the filter. You just have two 8mm bolts. And just be somewhat aware of the positioning and the length of the bolts as you pull them out. Oh my God. There, we made a mess. Boys and girls, that is how we make a mess. So without further ado, I'm going to swap this 8 off of here. I'm going to go after all these Torx. So these are all T30 Torx on the solenoid pack. I should add that I do have a very large sheet of cardboard that I put down underneath this because I knew this was going to be kind of messy. A very large sheet of cardboard underneath, so none of this has even hit my garage floor yet. Okay, now I got a little dribble on the floor. But that's not the worst thing that's happened. So for these T30s that are going to be in here, there's going to be there's 7 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then there's an 8th one here that's really short. That's going to be attached to this little plate that is connected to the solenoid pack. So once we get all that stuff out, loosen this up and just slide this thing down. So this is the little separator plate that I'm talking about. It's actually 2 separate pieces. Okay, so just for my personal reference, I'm just going to lay these bolts out on a piece of cardboard. Solenoid pack, 7 in 1 short. And filter, there's 2, and then I'll just continue to go lay the bolts out as I pull everything out and make sure I can keep track of them. Alright, so next we're going to take this reverse servo off. Just got 4 8mm bolts. Once you remove the 4 8mm bolts, the reverse servo will come out. Alright, so now we're going to go through and pull the rest of these valve body bolts out. So there's a 10mm bolt up here, and then the rest are all 8mm bolts. There is a detent lever right here. So this is going to be, when you pull this bolt out, this little detent lever for the shifter is going to fall out. So just keep that in mind. And then when it goes back in, this little lever sticking out here has to go into this little slot on the manual valve. So keep that in mind. Now let's go through and rip all these bolts out and drop the valve body down. When it loosens up, there's going to be a bunch of fluid pouring out, but I'm also going to be sure that I don't jostle the valve body around too much. And when that separator plate comes off, I'm going to make sure I don't bounce it around because there's check balls inside there and I don't want them to fall out of position. And then I'm just going to put them down as I take them out. I'm going to lay them down right next to me and then just make sure that they're all the same size. So I'm going to take one in the middle and I'm going to crack it loose a little bit and then I'll pull all the rest of them out. So here I'm going to pull this little detent lever out. So that one's a little bit shorter. So I'm going to leave that one inside that thing. We'll pull the rest out. You can see as I loosen that last one, it started spitting a bunch of fluid out. I just have the pan underneath it so it can all drop into the pan. Alright, so now that this is loose, I'm going to take this last bolt out. And drop the valve body down. And pull it out of the way. So here is the valve body. You can see the separator plate with the molded gaskets on it. There was 3 bolts holding this thing in. One here, one here, one here, and one right here. So I removed these 3 bolts. These are also T30 Torx. And the separator plate with the gaskets on it will come loose. So I already did some inspection on this thing, and there's a few things on here that I wanted to show you guys. I don't know if this is going to be like a smoking gun. I doubt it, but there's some spots where you can see that the gasket is kind of bubbling. This is the trans side. I don't think this one is as bad, but there's definitely some things when I flip this over that it took me a while to find, but maybe a little bit concerning. So you can see in this spot right here, this one is actually, the spot on the gasket is actually split. So this would be a fluid passage. So there would be fluid entering underneath the gasket here and here where it's cracked. And as I continue to look around the gasket, there's some other spots that are bubbled up. You can see bubbles. And then there's 2 significant spots where there's actually the gasket missing. So this is going from fluid passage to the actual aluminum where it would be compressing the gasket. So this section is split. The gasket is split almost all the way through where it would be compressing the gasket with the aluminum casing. So there's also another section right here. There's a chunk missing from the gasket. And so I found the other spot, kind of right by this other piece that I showed you. If you move down a little bit, right on the edge there, there's a little split, and as I squeeze it, you can see there's fluid coming out. So there's definitely fluid that was leaking past the gasket in this spot. And it's hard to say where it would go, but if it was loose or something else was going on, it's definitely going through the gasket. So it may not be for sure causing an issue, but if it's going through the gasket's not doing its job. So found at least 4 different spots in this gasket that are split or have holes in it. Alright, so I got the pan off, solenoid pack out, valve body down, and now I'm trying to remove the gasket from the separator plate. So they do have bonded separator plates, like the gasket is bonded to the separator plate that you can buy, but I just bought the gasket, so I'm going to have to actually remove mine. So that's kind of the step that I'm at right now, is I'm trying to get this gasket off. So I might try to just use some heat. I've been chipping away at it, and I'm probably just going to try to boil it or do something like that and try to get this gasket off of there. If all else fails, I might just go ahead and buy a separator plate with the bonded gasket right on it. Probably a lot better, but that's where I'm at right now. So everything is out. As soon as I can get this off, I'll put the new gaskets back on and everything's ready to go back in, and then we can see if this all works. So I think we're going to end that one here. I'm going to go through and try to figure out how to get that thing off. I'll probably boil it, use a razor blade and stuff, and I'll show that in the video. Whatever I do, I'll show that in the next video. And we'll work on getting everything back in, and then we'll go drive it, see if it works. Hopefully.